morning, guys. Happy Thursday. We meet again. I'm sitting down here in the studio. Got a whole bunch of stuff to go over with you guys, but I'm on some TV show called Undisputed, which I rather enjoy. Gentleman that used to be at ESPN. Joel, help me out with his name.
Skip Bayless.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Skip Bayless. All right. And who's his partner here?
Shannon Sharp.
Both very good. They're a bit of a Siskel and Ebert. I like how they go at topics, but they've been doing this for, I don't know, 7 or 8 minutes. They got a interstitial, which just means like a spot on the screen, a picture of Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. It says mind games. The whole thing is based around a statement that Chris Weidman, who's fighting this weekend, made. Chris Weidman conceded that Floyd will kill Conor, but that it will be an incredible event. Those were Chris's words, an incredible event. And I like that. I like that he said that because, one, it's accurate, and two, yeah, man, we don't have to act like it's something it's not. This is an incredible event. But we're watching Skip, and tell me his partner's name, Skip and?
Shannon Sharp.
Skip and Shannon have been going back and forth for a meaningful period of time about a fight that is not signed. I mean, I've never heard a fight talked about.
Thank you.
More. Do you remember when
CM
Punk signed with the UFC? And for a while there, I didn't know if Punk was going to fight. I personally kind of thought he wasn't. But I remember he got a media tour like nobody else. I mean, he was on Rome. He did what they call the car wash at Sports Center. It's so hard to get on Sports Center. He was over at FS1. He was doing the UFC Tonight. He was everywhere. There was no piece of media that MMA's ever had that CM Punk couldn't touch. It was such a big deal that he was coming over. But it was the first fight in my lifetime, the first time that a fighter had ever made it to that level of media with absolutely nothing to promote. He had no opponent, no date, no venue, and no weight class. And I just never said, so I'm watching all these interviews, and it was like interviews about nothing. You're talking about talking because there wasn't a fight. There wasn't tickets for sale. There was no attraction to look forward to. And I remember thinking, wow, this is a lot of media opportunities that guys with title fights and main events and, hey, I'm up this Saturday, that they can't get. Conor and Floyd is reminding me of that. We've got this fight that you and I have announced. This is the only show that stuck their credibility and actually announced this fight. This fight is happening. We have announced it on here, and we've staked our credibilities on it from the source with the ticketing company. But it officially is not. So they don't have a date yet. They don't have a venue. They don't have a weight class. They don't have all these things that you would need. I've never seen a fight talked about. CM Punk was the one fighter that could get opportunity, but I'm watching this, and to watch two guys that don't know anything about fighting talk about fighting and then argue, defiantly with one another is fascinating to me as much as it is irritating. And Skip Bayless was just breaking this down for Shannon and said, no, this is going to be a fight, and all that movement and footwork and showsmanship that Floyd Mayweather does, that's out the window. Because he's going to be in a fight. He's going to be put in a corner and forced to fight. And I'm listening to him, and I'm going, man, you're saying that really eloquently. You look good on TV doing it. He's a nice guy. Met Skip plenty of times. Nice guy. But I'm going, based on what? If you're going to make a crazy claim like this on television as a sports broadcaster in the fight game, and you've never done it in any fashion whatsoever, you at least have to turn to history. I talk about baseball all the time, football, basketball, these things I've never done. But then I'll give you a time and a game and a scenario where, and then insert my belief, happened. What time in fighting history, because his entire premise is that Conor will be such the bigger man. It's like, Skip, let's give him 20 pounds. Let's give him 50 pounds. I mean, I don't have to look back any further than Saturday when Rampage had 41 pounds on his opponent, and his opponent had him pinned up and cornered the entire time. So what piece of history is it that you're referring to when you're telling us the bigger man inside of a cage or a squared circle in this case has ever bullied and pushed his way? Because I can tell you plenty of times where the bigger man is slower, more methodical, tired, and is the one standing there as the target. So with what piece of historical reference is he pointing at to say that somebody can pin Floyd Mayweather into a corner and then keep him there as he tees off? It's like, man, in your mind, does that even work? For me, I know how insane that is because I know I'm in practice every day. I've been in the ring 49 times. I know how crazy it is, but I'm just wondering, the layman, does the layman even believe that's true? That a bigger guy just pushes a guy into a corner, keeps him there, and starts teeing off? Are you kidding me? Is that how much people disrespect the art of boxing?
Yes. Here's a bigger point.
It is yes? The answer is yes?
Hold on. Yes, they do disrespect it. Here's a bigger point. These guys are talking about this Undisputed show is a big show. It's a big show for Fox. It's one of their...
Yeah, it's a good show. We're watching it.
Well, they're talking about a fight that hasn't been made yet. There's no date. Instead of talking about the baseball, started this weekend. Yesterday was opening day. The national championship game was 2 nights ago. They're not talking about that, the NCAA national championship game. They're talking about a fight that hasn't been made yet. Now, one of the things that Bayless says, and he sticks to it, now I watch a ton of this, and I listen to a ton of sports radio, and I am gullible. You can tell me something, and you can change my mind.
I'm that same way. I will get influenced by a guy on TV. So honor amongst thieves here.
Here's what you're not going to change my mind on. Is that the reason, here's what Skip's saying. Skip's saying the reason Floyd is going to possibly lose the fight and get beat up is Conor's bigger and he's older. So Floyd Mayweather, who is the top 1 or 2 or 3 best defensive fighters of all time. Defense doesn't go away. The reason Bernard Hopkins was so successful for so many years is his defense. He's going to be able to somehow penetrate that defense because the calendar says that Mayweather's 40 years old. At some time whenever they announce this fight on this show, right here, I'm going to tell you, I think...
What?
I'm going to tell you, I think Conor... I'm fast forwarding the tape of stupidity. I'm going to tell you...
Conor's got a shot.
Conor's got a shot.
Yeah.
Conor might win this fight. I'm going to tell you that.
I will not tell you that, but I will admit right now that, yes, I will think that as well as he walks to the ring. Hey, he could win this fight. Well, if he lands that one punch... As insane as that is, and you're sitting here, and these guys want to talk about Floyd's older, and it's like, man, I don't know where this tipping point came from. When I was a senior in high school, there wasn't a first grader in all of the lands I was worried about. There wasn't a freshman in all of the lands I was worried about. Somewhere age became a disadvantage. Though growing up, all of our listeners can relate. Yeah, man, I didn't have to worry about an underclassman. Age has always been a good thing until it wasn't. And then somewhere with the commentary, they can be close too. It could be 28 versus 22. They're going to give the advantage to the 22-year-old. It's like, well, no, you're right in the thick of your prime around 28 years old. It's insane, but it will always go to the younger guy, according to these commentators. And then they do that with size too. Size has always been a disadvantage. We talk about Muhammad Ali, heavyweight champion of the world, 198 pounds. Mike Tyson, most dominant boxer the sport's ever seen, 220 pounds. Size is such an incredible disadvantage, but they'll always talk about it like it's an advantage.
Well, here's what
But they can't point to history. I just pointed to the 2 greatest boxing heavyweight divisions ever seen, in Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson. I just pointed that. Who are you bringing forward? Skip and Shan. Who are you guys bringing forward as your examples that size helps?
Now, if anything about this fight that hadn't been signed yet and doesn't have a date, doesn't have a venue, I do believe they will contest it at 147 pounds. Well, that means Conor has to suck to 147. That's a big cut. Just because he's going to be 165, 170 the next night doesn't mean he doesn't have to cut that weight.
Isn't that annoying? When your guy wins, it's always, well, he was so much bigger. And when your guy loses, it's, well, he had to suck all that weight. He was exhausted. He pulled all the way down to 147. And there's always a built-in excuse. It's like, guys, just shut up and go box. And the sport of boxing, I think that boxing reigns supreme here and the whole world gets its eyes open. That there's actual sport going on. There's not just 2 knuckleheads out there punching one another till one of them gets tired and stops. There's a sport and an art form, and that's what Floyd brings to the table. I truly believe that. If I'm wrong, it's going to be like finding out there's no Santa Claus. But Joel, I'm looking at this thing and going, okay, I've done wrestling since I was 9 and MMA since I was 19. If I stop right now and you announce that I have a contest in either one of those forms, okay, I'm the same age as Floyd. I have a contest in either one of those forms in September of this year. I use that because that's the rumor date that these guys are going to box. You could call it December 29th, the last day of this year, December 30th. Last day of this year. I never get a break of sweat again. This is the criteria. I don't get to prepare at all. I don't get to do nothing. But I got to take on a guy who's got some size on me. He's 10 years younger than me, but he's never done either one of those sports ever. Now, he gets to train nonstop, but he's never done it before ever. Joel, it's going to be a walk in the park for me. I'm going to throw my mouthpiece in. I'm going to pull up my singlet straps, whatever for. It's going to be a walk in the park. I've done it my entire life. I don't understand so they're talking about his age. Well, what does age mean? That he's slowed down and he's not training as well. That's the only thing age means. Hey, I don't want to do it as much. Maybe my body can't. Maybe mentally I just don't want to, so I'm just not quite preparing as hard. Floyd's still going to prepare. Now, I argue that Floyd is still absolutely in his prime because I talk to guys at the gym that say he is nuts when it comes to training. I've heard some of the training days that he goes through, and I'm like, what?
We've watched it on HBO and then Showtime.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm told he hasn't slowed down one single bit. But if the argument is that Conor's younger, then what is it that you're arguing? That he's hungrier, that he wants it more, that he's running 8 miles while Floyd's running 7? What is it that you're arguing is the benefit to that? So let's just go totally the other way. Conor trains harder than he's ever trained before, but he has to go into a sport that he's never done before. Floyd doesn't get to train at all, but he goes into a sport that he's never lost at professionally. Is there any gap of time within the calendar year of 2017 that Floyd doesn't get him out of there in the first round if boxing's a real sport? And I personally think it is, but that's what we're being told here by Skip and Shannon and everybody else that's giving Conor any kind of a chance. And you and I are cheering for Conor because he represents MMA and we know him. We still can't give him any kind of a chance because it absolutely embarrassed. I mean, you're telling Oscar De La Hoya and Manny Pacquiao that their life's work didn't matter because they're not as good as the guy Conor's about to go against. And now you're saying that Conor, I mean, this is insane.
As good.
Or boxing's fake. It's one of the two.
As good as a MMA wrestler that George St. Pierre is, and arguably the best MMA wrestler of all time, arguably.
Who would you argue against him? Is it arguable? It's just George, isn't it?
Randy's pretty good. You're pretty good. I could throw some names in there. Daniel Cormier. I mean, it's arguable. All right. It doesn't matter. He's never going to score a point, unless Ben Askren lets him up. And it's a folk style match. He's never, ever, 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 ever going to beat Ben Askren in a wrestling match, any style, Greco, freestyle, folk style, any style. It's not going to happen.
Ever.
Ever.
Schedule the match for 3 years from now. Ben doesn't get to break another sweat. George gets to train every day. He wouldn't get a point.
Ever.
Because it's a real sport.
And there will be a time. We should do an over-under when I come on air and say I think Floyd's going to win.
You mean Conor?
Yeah, that Conor's going to win. There should be a time. I wanted to mention about Mayweather and his training. He's got all sorts of money. He acts the fool. He's a million different things to hate, and that's why he's made so much money. He trains. He is going to train his ass off. He knows this is his 50th. This breaks Marciano's record. This is a big fight, let alone all the damn money they're going to make. He's going to be prepared. There's no way, no matter how. Conor may go down in the history of the greatest MMA fighter of all time. I'm not saying that he will, but he could. He's got 2 titles right now. Who knows what the guy's going to do? He's not going to win this fight. I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to go 1 round. I think Mayweather is going to take all the gas out of his tank and then pick them apart and show you that there is a difference between boxing and MMA boxing. I was talking to Ladd about boxing because Ladd doesn't know anything about boxing. And I started rattling off all of these great fights. I love boxing. I would rather watch a awesome boxing match than a good or awesome MMA match. There's just so few of them. They're not out there, and you don't know when you're going to win the lottery. You don't know when you're going to have a great fight. A trilogy like Frazier, Ali, Evander Holyfield, Riddick Bowe. You don't know when they're going to happen. But yeah, the guy doesn't have a chance. But I will be in the next 6 months. I'll come on this show and say, you know what? I think he's going to win.
Sure. No, I understand. Yeah, and that's brainwashing. That's advertising. That's what it does. But when you've got these shows, and this Undisputed show is a big show, a lot of people watch it. They just got influenced right now by what Skip Bayless said. They just got influenced by, they're going, well, yeah, he is bigger. That's true, and he is going to go fight. And both of those things are true. Conor is going to go fight, and Conor is going to be bigger. The problem is he's doing an art he's never done against a guy who's never lost at it. It's either a real sport or it's not. There's actual you always hear these announcers, they want to talk about footwork and hand speed and defensive skills. Those are either real things or they're not. Footwork is an actual thing or it's not. And hand speed matters or it doesn't. Defensive boxing matters. It's a real thing or it's not.
Who's he going to spar with? Who is Conor going to spar with that will make him believe that he can beat Floyd Mayweather? He's not going to spar with a top 10 boxer in the world because he can't beat a top 10 boxer in the world. He can't do it. It's not his sport. So who is going to make him believe that he can win this fight other than Skip Bayless?
Yeah, well, yeah, Conor may believe. I have no idea, but yes, if he's in there, you saw the training footage that was released of T.J. Dillashaw. Incredible talent. T.J. Dillashaw is such a special talent. Sparring with a former boxing champion. The guy, I can't remember how old, but, a good boxer. I can't even produce the guy's name for it. Did you see that footage?
I did not.
Okay. It wasn't close, and TJ did an interview on it and said the same thing. He's like, oh, yeah, no, he picks me apart when we go out and box. But that's truthful. I mean, that's what this whole thing is silly. But to Chris Weidman's point, I like what he said. It's going to be an incredible event. WrestleMania wasn't competitive in any one of the matches, but boy, was it an incredible event. And I think we can wrap our arms around that. I think it could be promoted as that. But these announcers that are coming on Skip and Shannon, they're being serious. They're trying to give their fight breakdown. Skip's talking about because he's bigger, he's going to pin Floyd Mayweather into a corner and beat on him. And it's like, based on what? I mean, I know that's not based on reality as a fighter, but there's not a lot of fighters out there. So, okay, I know that. But does the average, can you point to any piece of history where you took some great big guy, heavyweight division where there's all sorts of weight discrepancies, let alone this, that's at they're going to weigh in at the exact same thing 24 hours before bell time. I don't give a damn how big you want to say Conor is. He's going to weigh the exact same thing as Floyd does 24 hours before the fight. You can only be so big. So now what are you talking about? 14 pounds? King Mo just gave up 41. Okay, so what are you talking about? He's all that big. Have all your talking points on you that you want, but offer me a piece of history where that ever happened. Where did a big guy ever? Tell me you saw it on the playground. Tell me you saw it in a bar and I'll accept it, but you didn't. The bigger guy is at a disadvantage. Some guy's kid got his ass kicked on the playground, and when he had to go tell his buddies at the job site the next day about it, he wanted to defend Junior, so he said, well, the kid was a lot bigger. That's where that came from. It did not come from a cage or a squared circle or any kind of competitive atmosphere whatsoever where a bigger guy actually had an advantage. And I know there's a tipping point, and a lot of times a guy will win a fight, and you'll go, well, he was 5 or 6 pounds bigger. That is true. But not near as many times a guy won a fight and he was 5 or 6 pounds smaller. It always favors the smaller guy. Even in wrestling, the hardest guy to wrestle is the guy that is one weight class below you because he's a little bit quicker. The same thing goes in boxing. The same thing goes in MMA. That was the big lie told to the world when Conor McGregor moved up to 155, is that he wouldn't be big enough. It's like, no, the hardest guy to fight is the guy from one weight class below. You want Conor to have problems? Bring a guy up from 135. And have him fight. Conor will have that. That'll be harder for him than moving up in size. And historically, I'm right on. History supports me 100%. But you'll hear these announcers that say things. You and I were surprised that Undisputed, that Skip and Shannon went out and did 10 minutes on a Conor Floyd fight, and we were even annoyed by it because the fight isn't done. And you want to know who else did 10 minutes today on this fight that isn't even signed?
Joe Rogan.
You and I. So let's move on.